My name is Rosalind, and the night I was supposed to die began like a celebration and ended like a verdict. We left the restaurant after 9. The street was slick, the air cold, the kind that bites the lungs. My husband drove. His hands rested easy on the wheel. Too easy. He did not look at me when I thanked him for the dinner. He only said, "You will remember tonight," and turned onto the highway. The traffic thinned. The road opened. The dashboard clock ticked louder than it should. I watched his profile in the window's reflection. Calm, focused, detached. I asked if he was all right. He said, "Just thinking." I asked about what. He said, "About what comes next." The car drifted a little. He did not correct. I reached toward the wheel on instinct. His hand brushed mine away. "Do not," he said. Flat. Final. A bend approached. He did not brake. I did. My foot met empty air. He had locked the pedal on his side, a feature I never knew the car had. The guardrail rushed toward us. The tires screamed. The hood dipped. The world tilted hard left. Metal buckled with a sound that swallowed my breath. Glass burst. I saw a wash of white sparks and then the black, total and heavy. I woke to fluorescent light and a mask over my mouth. My chest burned with each breath. Bandages crossed my arms. A nurse adjusted the oxygen and told me to stay still. I asked for my husband. She paused. Her eyes moved to the chart, then back to me. "No one has been here," she said. "Do you have someone we can call?" "No one." The word rang in my head like a hammer. I gave her Elaine's number. Elaine answered on the first ring and said she was on her way. I stared at the ceiling and tried to replay the bend, the speed, the way his voice had sounded. Calm. Certain. Detached. A doctor came in with the scans. A mild concussion. 2 cracked ribs. Cuts. Bruises. "You are lucky," he said. "Another strike to the head and you would not be here." He spoke about rest and hydration. He left. In the hall he spoke lower to a colleague. I heard enough. Lucky. And with that inheritance. Pressure from family can be strange. Inheritance. The word pulled me upright. Weeks earlier my uncle had died. He left me $11 million. I had not touched it. My husband knew every detail. When the nurse left, I reached for my phone with shaking hands. I called my husband. Disconnected. I called again. Disconnected. I called his office. The receptionist hesitated and then said he no longer worked there. I asked when. She said last week. I asked if he had left a number. She said no. Elaine arrived and held my hand. She smelled like rain and worry. "What happened?" she asked. I told her the facts. The bend. The locked brake. The silence. I did not tell her the sentence he had said in the car. "You will remember tonight." I kept that to myself and listened to my own breath until it steadied. On the second day, a social worker brought a small plastic bag with my belongings. Inside was my phone, my wallet, and a folded newspaper that must have been left in the ambulance. The page caught my eye. A photo of my husband, a woman on his arm. The headline: Attorney marries childhood sweetheart in private ceremony. The date was 5 days after the crash. My fingers went numb. I showed Elaine. She did not speak for a full 10 seconds. Then she said, slow and clear, "He thought you were gone." The discharge came on day 3. I signed papers with stiff hands. The nurse reminded me about rest and medication. No driving. No stress. No sudden movement. I nodded, thanked her, and walked out in borrowed clothes. The sky was gray. The air felt thinner. Elaine drove me to her place. My house was not an option. He could be there. She locked the door behind us. I lay on the couch and stared at the dark window until my eyes burned. That night I tried to sleep. My ribs protested every turn. When I closed my eyes, I heard the metal again. I saw the guardrail bend. I smelled the chemical sting of the airbag. I heard his voice in the car. "You will remember tonight." I did. Every second. In the morning, I called the insurer to ask for the accident report. The woman on the line read from the file. Single vehicle. Loss of control on a curve. Weather conditions fair. No other cars involved. I asked if anyone had been listed as present after the crash. She said a passing driver had called it in. No husband on record. Elaine made tea I could not drink. We go to the police, she said. We file a report. I shook my head. Not yet. I needed strength. I needed a plan. If I went too early, he would twist it. He would make me the confused wife with a head injury and a grudge. I had seen him argue a case. He could make fire sound like water. I opened a clean notebook. I wrote the date. I wrote the time. I wrote each fact in its own line. Break. Bend. Disconnected phone. Job quit. Marriage. Headline. $11 million. No visit. No call. New wife. I underlined the last line twice. New wife. I looked at the photo again. Her smile was wide. His hand was tight on her waist. I studied the background. A church I recognized 2 towns over. A florist I knew by name. I knew where they had stood. I knew where they had smiled. I set the page down and breathed through the ache in my ribs. Cliffhanger. He thought I was buried under twisted metal and clean paperwork. He thought his new life was sealed. Tomorrow I would stand where they took that photo. If he had built lies on that ground, I would start tearing from there. Part 2: Inciting Incident. The church looked smaller in daylight, but it pressed down on me like a weight. Its white walls had seen weddings, baptisms, lives begin, and mine be erased. I stood at the bottom of the steps with my ribs still aching under the coat and stared at the heavy doors. A man leaving gave me a polite nod and held one open. For a moment I almost turned away, afraid that stepping inside would make it real. Then I went in. The air smelled of lilies, faint but sharp, like something left over from their vows. I sat on the last pew and pulled the folded newspaper from my bag. His smile on the page cut me deeper than the glass in my arm had. Claire. Childhood sweetheart. The headline had made it sound inevitable, like their love was destiny, and I had just been a placeholder. My fingers pressed so hard on the photo that the ink smudged. I stared at the altar where he had stood with her. I imagined him sliding a ring onto her finger while I lay in a hospital bed, barely alive. I remembered the sound of his voice in the car, cold and certain. You will remember tonight. And I realized I wasn't meant to survive. That thought shook me harder than the crash itself. I opened my phone. County records were public. It didn't take long to find their marriage license. The date glared back at me, 5 days after my accident. His signature beside hers, bold, confident, as if I had never existed. My stomach churned. Elaine called just as I screenshotted the record. Where are you? She asked. My throat tightened. I said, at the church. The silence stretched long before she whispered. Rosalind, this is dangerous. If he sees you. He won't. I cut her off. Not yet. He thinks I'm gone, and I'm going to let him. That night sleep refused to come. I lay on the couch at Elaine's place, ribs throbbing, listening to the rain tapping the window. My mind replayed the crash. The locked brake, his calm hands, the words he chose. The pieces lined up like stones in a grave. He had not lost control. He had chosen not to stop. I grabbed my notebook and started writing in columns. First column, facts. Brake locked. Phone disconnected. Office quit. Marriage license. Second column, suspicions. Intentional crash. Access to inheritance. A new wife who benefited. Third column, proof needed. Insurance data. Financial transfers. Witness statements. I underlined that line twice. Proof was survival. Proof was power. 2 days later, I forced myself to drive past our old home. My hands clenched the wheel until they shook. The curtains were new, pale blue instead of the ones I had chosen. A car I didn't recognize gleamed in the driveway. Through the front window I saw them. Him pouring wine into Claire's glass, her head tilted back in laughter, his hand brushing her shoulder. My throat burned. I raised my phone and snapped photos, each one sharper than the last. Proof. Not just for me but for anyone who would try to doubt me later. Every frame made my heartbeat steadier. But then my phone buzzed in my hand. A message from an unknown number. You're lucky to be alive. My blood ran cold. I whipped my head toward the street. Empty. No footsteps, no cars, just the hum of a distant mower. I typed back. Who is this? 3 dots blinked. Then another message appeared. Don't show yourself yet. He thinks you're dead. Use that. My fingers trembled so badly I almost dropped the phone. I typed again, tell me who you are. No reply. Only silence, heavy and thick. I stayed parked for 10 minutes, scanning every tree, every window, convinced eyes were on me. Claire's laughter floated faintly through the glass, and rage replaced my fear. He thought I was gone. She thought she had one. But someone else out there knew the truth. That night I locked Elaine's doors twice, then checked them again. I pressed the phone to my chest and whispered the words aloud. He thinks I'm dead. The thought that had once terrified me now pulsed like a weapon. If he wanted a ghost, I would give him one. Until I was ready to strike. He had buried me in lies. Claire had worn my life like a trophy. But someone in the shadows had seen me survive. And that meant I wasn't fighting alone. The morning after the anonymous text, I woke to the sound of Elaine pacing the kitchen. She stopped when I walked in. You look pale, she said. Did you sleep at all? Not really. I poured coffee I didn't want just to keep my hands steady. Someone knows. Someone texted me yesterday. Elaine froze, cup halfway to her lips. What do you mean someone knows? They said I was lucky to be alive. That I should stay hidden. Rosalind, that could be him. Could be a trap. I shook my head. No. He would want silence. He wouldn't risk contact. But my words didn't convince me. I pulled my notebook from my bag and spread it across the table. The columns were still there. Facts, suspicions, proof needed. If I'm going to take him down, I need evidence. I need more than photos and a marriage license. Elaine leaned closer. What do you have in mind? I thought of the crash, the locked brake, the way he had vanished so neatly. Paper trails. Financial records. Calls. If he planned this, there will be signs. That afternoon, we drove to the insurance office. I told Elaine to wait outside. The clerk behind the counter was young, distracted, and easily flustered. I explained I was requesting additional details for my claim. He printed copies reluctantly. I scanned them right there. The accident report was thin, but one line jumped out at me. Reported by passerby. Silver sedan, female driver, stopped to call emergency services. I asked for the contact info. The clerk shook his head. Confidential. I pressed harder. I was in that car. I have the right to know who pulled me out of it. He hesitated, then slipped me a sticky note with a name, Margaret Duffy. My heart raced. A witness. I tucked it away and thanked him. Back in the car, Elaine asked, good news. Maybe, I said. Someone saw what happened. Someone not tied to him. That evening, I searched the county property database for Margaret Duffy. She lived 15 miles out, on a quiet road near the lake. I copied the address into my notebook, but the phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. Be careful. He's watching accounts. I froze. Accounts. I rushed to log into my bank. Password error. Again. Same error. Panic clawed at me. Elaine leaned over. What is it? He's already moving the money, I whispered. I tried the investment app. Locked. My pulse hammered in my throat. Then another text arrived. Change everything. Now. Elaine grabbed my shoulders. Who is sending these? Friend or enemy? I shook my head. I don't know. But they're right. We spent the next 2 hours on my laptop, creating new accounts, transferring what I could into safer channels. Each confirmation felt like a small victory. But when it was done, I sat back in the chair and whispered, this is only the beginning. The next morning, we drove to Margaret's address. A small white house with peeling paint. A woman in her 60s opened the door, cautious but kind. Can I help you? She asked. I introduced myself softly. Her eyes widened. You're the woman from the crash. I nodded. She invited us in. Her living room smelled of lavender and old books. She sat across from me, hands folded tight. I stopped because your car looked like it had been nudged, not lost control. It was too clean, too deliberate. I told the officer. He shrugged it off. My breath caught. You're saying someone forced it? She nodded. Yes. It was another car, dark-colored, trailing you. I saw it speed away after the crash, like it had done its job. Elaine gasped. I gripped the arm of the chair until my knuckles hurt. A second car. Someone helping him. Margaret leaned closer. You're lucky to be here. Whoever did this wanted you gone. I thanked her, voice trembling. She pressed a piece of paper into my hand before I left. A license plate she had scribbled down that night. Back in the car, Elaine whispered, "That's it. That's proof. We go to the police." I shook my head. Not yet. Not until I know who was behind that wheel. I stared at the plate number in my hand. My husband wasn't alone. He had help. And if I wanted to win, I needed to find out who else wanted me dead. The crash wasn't just his betrayal, it was a plan. And now I had a witness, a plate number, and a target. The license plate burned in my palm the entire ride back. I had held on to many pieces of proof in my life. Contracts, receipts, legal files. But none felt heavier than those 6 letters and numbers. They were more than ink. They were a name waiting to be unmasked. Elaine drove in silence, eyes darting to the rearview mirror. When we reached her house, she locked the door twice before we sat at the table. "You can't do this alone," she said. "I don't plan to," I answered. I had already written a list of names in my notebook. Allies. People who would not bend to him. Elaine first. Then my old colleague Marcia, an attorney with no ties to him. And maybe, just maybe, the unknown messenger who had already saved me once. I called Marcia that afternoon. Her voice was brisk, professional, but softened when she heard mine. "Rosalind?" I thought. She cut herself short. I told her everything. The crash. The marriage. The inheritance. The witness. When I mentioned the license plate, her tone sharpened. "That is enough to start building a case. But you need to be careful. If he thinks you survived, he will strike again." "I know," I said. "That's why he can't know." "Not yet." Marcia agreed to meet in her office after hours. Elaine insisted on driving me. The building smelled faintly of ink and old coffee. Behind closed blinds, I handed Marcia the photos, the newspaper, the witness note. She studied each one without comment, only tapping her pen when she reached the plate number. "This could be traced," she said. "I'll file a request quietly through a contact. But Rosalind, you need to prepare for the possibility that it belongs to someone close to him. Maybe even someone you know." The thought hollowed my chest. A friend? A colleague? My mind raced. I had seen him whisper to men at parties, share quick glances with people I had trusted. Marcia leaned forward. "There is another matter. Finances. If he has already touched your accounts, we need to freeze everything under your name and redirect the inheritance. We'll move faster than he can." For the first time since the crash, I felt the ground under me solidify. "Do it," I said. We spent hours drafting documents, arranging transfers, sealing loopholes. When I finally signed the papers, my hand trembled, but with strength, not fear. On the way back to Elaine's, my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. "Trust Marcia. She is clean. But do not trust the next name you hear from him." I read it twice, my stomach twisting. Someone was watching me that closely. The next day, I received an email from an old family friend, Harold, who had once worked with my husband. It was brief. "He wants to meet you. He knows you're alive." My blood went cold. Elaine grabbed the phone. "It's a trap." But my mind was already racing. If he knew, then silence was no longer protection. It was time to turn survival into offense. That evening, I laid the notebook open again. On one page, allies. Elaine. Marcia. The anonymous number. On the other, unknowns. Harold. The driver of the second car. The depth of my husband's reach. "I'm not the victim anymore," I whispered. Elaine heard and nodded. I called Marcia again. "We need to escalate. I want every step documented. When he falls, it has to be public, undeniable." She paused, then said, "You're talking about building not just a case, Rosalind. You're talking about exposure." "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "If he wanted me erased, then the only revenge is making sure his face, his lies, and his betrayal are carved into record, where no one can erase them." The plan had shifted. No longer just survival. Now it was strategy. Tomorrow, I would sit in Marcia's office again, and she would hand me the name behind the plate number. Whoever it was would change everything. Marcia's office lights were dim when Elaine and I arrived the next evening. She had stayed late, and a single desk lamp threw long shadows across the files she had spread open. My chest tightened as she slid one folder toward me. "The plate number you gave me," she said quietly. "It belongs to a rental car. Paid for with a corporate account registered to your husband's firm. And the driver? She hesitated. One of his junior partners. Someone who has worked with him for years. The words hit like a hammer. My husband hadn't just betrayed me with Claire. He had used his own company to cover the attempt on my life. A partner had driven the car that forced me off the road. I clenched my fists. So it wasn't just him. He had help. And they thought no one would ever know. Marcia nodded. But now you do. And if you want to make this stick, we have to move carefully. You need not just suspicion. You need layers of undeniable proof. I leaned forward. Then we make a plan. Elaine crossed her arms. Rosalind, this is dangerous. He already tried to kill you once. Do you want to bait him into trying again? Yes, I said, my voice sharp. Because when he tries again, we'll be ready. Marcia tapped her pen on the desk. Start by protecting yourself. We need a shadow trail of documents. Backups of everything. Witness testimony from Margaret. Photos of him with Claire. The marriage license. Bank movements. And most of all, evidence from inside his office. The thought made me pause. Inside? How? You once worked with him, didn't you? Marcia asked. People remember you. If we use the fact that he thinks you're gone, we can get someone else inside. Or you could step in quietly yourself. Elaine almost shouted. No. She can't walk into that building. But the idea had already taken root. If I show up disguised, if I slip in as someone no one expects, I can find the files he thinks are hidden. Elaine shook her head. That's not a plan, Rosalind. That's suicide. Marcia leaned back. It's a risk, but a calculated one. We'll need more than scraps. We need the kind of documents he can't explain away. Transfers, contracts, instructions signed in his hand. If he mortgaged assets or funneled money, there will be a trail. I exhaled slowly, the weight of the decision pressing on me. I thought of Claire's laugh through the window, of my husband's cold words before the crash. He believed I was gone. He believed he had erased me. That arrogance would be his undoing. Fine, I said at last. We do it. But I won't go in blind. Marcia pulled out a calendar. We'll build it in stages. First, gather what you can from a distance. Witness statements. Financial anomalies. Then create a diversion. If he is focused on Claire, he won't be looking behind him. That's when you get inside. Elaine groaned, but she stayed silent. She knew nothing would stop me. That night, back at her house, I filled page after page in the notebook. Step 1. Secure Margaret's official statement. Step 2. Have Marcia file a silent freeze on my inheritance accounts. Step 3. Document every appearance of him and Claire together. Step 4. Prepare a disguise and an entry point into his office. By the time I closed the book, my hand ached, but for the first time since the crash, I felt alive. This wasn't survival anymore. This was war. The phone buzzed again at midnight. Same unknown number. He is planning a trip next week. Use it. The office will be empty. My pulse quickened. Whoever this person was, they had access to his schedule. And that meant they could be trusted or they could be leading me into a trap. I typed back. Why are you helping me? No reply came. I shut the phone off and whispered into the darkness. If you think I'll be your pawn, you're wrong. This is my plan now. In 7 days he would leave the city. And in those 7 days, I would gather enough proof to burn his empire to the ground. The plan had been simple on paper. Richard would leave the city for his week-long conference. The office would be empty. Marcia's contact at the bank would stall any transfers. Margaret's witness statement would be ready. I would slip in, find the documents, copy everything, and be gone before anyone noticed. 7 days of pressure had sharpened every move into something precise and cold. On the morning I chose, I felt hollow with focus. Elaine dressed my hair into a simple bob and handed me a blazer that hid my hospital stiffness. If anyone asks, you are a temp, she said. A contractor. Do not give them anything real. I nodded. My hands did not shake as I left. The anonymous number had texted 3 times overnight. Now, he is on the flight manifest. I drove to the office in a gray sedan, heartbeat in my throat. The building's glass rose like a temple to his success. I parked 2 blocks away and walked in head down. The lobby felt different. A new receptionist sat behind the desk, polished and cool. Her name tag read Eloise. She scanned me without warmth. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. "No," I said. "I'm here to help with archive cleanup. Temporary." I smiled because Marcia had coached me on the tone. "Unremarkable." Eloise made a slow note and picked up the phone. "Security will buzz you in." She pressed the intercom. The lock clicked. I moved. The elevator smelled of lemon cleaner. On the way up, my phone buzzed. "Marcia, hold. New development. He is not on the plane anymore." My breath snagged. "What?" I typed. No response. I stepped out on the floor and immediately felt it. Tension, an electric shift. The usual hum of clerks and phones was deeper, nervous. Voices stopped when I passed. At the far end, the door to the partner wing was open. A man I recognized from board photos stood in the corridor, talking fast into his phone. He looked up and his eyes locked on me. The same face from the rental. The junior partner who had driven that night. His mouth thinned. He raised a hand and nodded to someone behind him. I moved faster, and the elevator dinged behind me. 2 security guards appeared at the stairwell, then another. My stomach flipped. This was not the empty office I had planned for. I ducked into a supply closet and breathed, trying to steady my thoughts. The anonymous number buzzed again. Abort. He changed plans. He called a sudden investors' dinner tonight. Claire insisted he stay. The message was blunt and raw. "Get out." I pressed my back to the cold metal and felt the weight of the room. Getting out meant leaving a path unpursued. Staying meant we risked running into the very people who had tried to kill me. My phone chimed. "Marcia. They moved money last night. Immediate transfer to shell accounts abroad. We caught some but not all." Her words were clipped. "Few are there, get out now." I had come too far to run. I folded the message into the lining of my blazer like a map and stepped out slowly. There might be cameras, more guards, and risk, but the files could still be in the lock safe in his assistant's office. I slipped past a cluster of cubicles, my shoulders tight. At the assistant's desk, a young woman looked up. Her eyes narrowed. "Can I help you?" she asked in a voice lined with boredom and suspicion. I smiled the practiced smile. "Archival support," I said. "I'm here to collect obsolete files." She hesitated. "You need a badge." Her hand moved toward the intercom. Before she could press it, the junior partner who had seen me stepped into view. He was not lovely. His face was hard and sudden, as if anger could cut metal. "That woman," he said, his voice low but sharp. "I remember her." He didn't wait for a response. He strode toward me. My pulse hammered. I clutched the folder I pretended to carry. "I think you are mistaken," I managed, but my voice sounded thin. He stopped a meter away, eyes flicking up and down my figure. Then he smiled. Not the easy, friendly smile of before, but a knife of a smile. "No mistake. You look familiar. We had a car recall last month. Did you file the report yourself?" He pulled out his phone and tapped. "Security, check corridor 5. Female matching description." Panic rose hot and loud. The assistant's hand trembled as she reached for the intercom. A guard's step echoed from the stair. I had rejected the safe route. Now the company's engine whirred to life against me. I turned and bolted for the stairwell. The corridor behind me filled with voices. Footsteps multiplied. A door slammed. My breath came fast, each gasp stabbing at bruised ribs. I took the stairs 2 at a time and burst into the street into the gray light. Cars swept by, indifferent. I did not stop to breathe. I ran to the sedan, dove in, and drove without thinking of routes. My phone vibrated incessantly. "Marcia, sit tight. Fetch Elaine. Call the police if you can. We'll stall from here." Anonymous number. "Are you safe? Where are you?" I typed back out. My hands shook. 2 blocks away, traffic slowed and a black SUV rolled up beside me. The passenger window dropped. Claire leaned out, perfume sharp even through glass. She smiled like a sunlit murderer. "Rosalind," she purred. "You should have stayed dead." Her voice was ordinary, terrible. My world narrowed to a pinpoint. She called my name like a benediction. The SUV accelerated and merged into traffic. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles whitened. The office had changed its schedule. moved the dinner earlier, and tightened security. They were ready because of something I did not know. Someone had fed them information. Or someone inside had turned. I pulled into a quiet lot off the main road and shut the engine. Rain had started soft at first, then heavier. I wiped my face with the back of my hand and realized the truth was uglier than I had imagined. My enemy had reach, money, men, and a new wife brazen enough to threaten me on the street. As I sat there, the anonymous number lit up my screen. I did not warn you. I was compromised. Run. Now. The message ended with an address. The place Claire had just come from. I looked up. The SUV was nowhere in sight. But someone had just told me where they would be tonight. And that meant the plan I had built on silence had a new, far more dangerous path. The rain turned to needles on the windshield. My phone screen glowed with the address again and again, a beacon in the gray. It was a hotel on the east side, new glass and steel, famous for its rooftop bar. Richard had brought me there once to show me what real power felt like, while we dined with senators. Now his new wife and his junior partner were gathering there for something they thought would be hidden. My heartbeat became a metronome for war. I dialed Marcia. "They know," I said. My voice cracked, but only once. Security tried to pin me inside. Claire threatened me on the street. Marcia hissed an oath. "Then you go louder," she said. "You have proof, Rosalind. Make it count." Her tone shifted, fierce now. "Send me the files you already copied. I'll leak them to the regulators and press. You get yourself somewhere public." I opened my laptop on the passenger seat. My fingers moved with surgical precision. Screenshots of offshore transfers. Minutes of meetings labeled private. A PDF of Claire's contract as a consultant, with a 7-figure retainer pulled from company funds. I sent them all to Marcia, then another copy to a secure server. Insurance. Always insurance. But simply leaking would not be enough. I needed to look into Richard's eyes and watch the fortress he had built on my name collapse. That was the part of the plan I had not told even Marcia. That was why the anonymous contact's message had burned in my veins. Run. Now. But also address. My address to fate. I started the car and headed for the hotel. Traffic slowed, horns and wet tires filling the air. My mind built the scene ahead. Richard at the head of a private dinner with investors, Claire gleaming at his side. The junior partner lurking like a shadow. They thought they were untouchable. But if the press and regulators descended on the same evening, their untouchability would dissolve into scandal and frozen accounts. Inside my blazer pocket, a small thumb drive pressed against my ribs. On it was the recording from the night of the crash, the voices of Richard and Claire arguing about the problem I had become, the payout they planned with my life insurance. I had kept it like a talisman. Tonight it would be the sword. The hotel loomed ahead, windows glowing. I parked in a delivery lane and slipped out with my laptop bag slung like a messenger's. My reflection in the glass doors looked like someone else. Hair damp, eyes hard, mouth set. The doorman moved to intercept me, but I flashed a badge I had borrowed from one of Marcia's contacts. "Press," I said. He hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, the air was warm and perfumed. Guests sipped cocktails under Art Deco lights. I moved to the elevators. No one stopped me. The anonymous number buzzed again. "Private room, 30th floor, West Wing. Wait for my signal." My stomach tightened. "Who are you?" I typed. No reply. On the 30th floor, the corridor was hushed, carpet muffling my steps. At the end, double doors gleamed with brass. Voices drifted out, laughter, the clink of glasses, a man boasting about margins. I edged closer and peered through the crack. There they were. Richard in a dark suit, Claire in a silver dress, the junior partner whispering into a phone. Around them, investors, some of whom had toasted me at our wedding. My fingers curled around the thumb drive. My plan had been to slip it into the projector system and let it play while regulators arrived. But seeing their faces so calm and smug, I felt something deeper ignite, years of being the quiet one, the good wife, the signature behind his empire. I stepped back, breathed once, and then pushed the doors open. The room went silent. Dozens of eyes turned. Richard's smile faltered, then vanished. Claire's glass tilted in her hand. "Rosalind," Richard said, voice strangled. "You." He stopped, as if the word alive had turned to ash in his mouth. I see you still know my name, I said. My voice was steady, loud enough for every investor to hear. Good. Because you are all about to hear his as well. Claire laughed, but it was brittle. Security, she snapped. Remove this woman. 2 men moved, but the investors hesitated, glancing between me and Richard. Some had their phones half-raised, recording. I would sit, I told them. You'll want to see this. I crossed to the projector console and plugged in the drive. Screens flickered to life on 3 walls. Audio rolled out. A conversation in a car, Richard's voice cold and calculating, Claire's sharper. Words about ending the liability, about payouts, about making it look like an accident. Gasps rippled through the room. Richard lunged toward me, but one investor, an older man with a senator's pin, blocked him. Sit down, Richard, he said quietly. Explain this. Cameras clicked like insects. Claire's face drained of color. The junior partner slipped toward the door but found it blocked by 2 regulators Marcia had sent with warrants. They held up papers like swords. I watched Richard's empire fold in seconds. Phones buzzing, investors whispering, regulators reading rights. Claire's hand shook so badly her glass fell and shattered. Richard turned to me, face contorted. You think you win? He hissed. You think they'll believe you? They already do, I said. And tomorrow they'll see the bank records, the contracts, the offshore transfers. Everything. My voice rose. You called me a liability. You tried to erase me. Tonight you are the one erased. The room exploded into motion, questions, cameras, security, shouting orders. Claire fled toward the hallway but was intercepted. Richard sagged into his chair like a man suddenly old. I stood in the center, the rain dripping from my coat onto his expensive carpet, and felt the weight of years lift. And then, as the regulators moved in and the investors turned their backs, my phone buzzed one last time. The anonymous number. He is not your only enemy. Check the parking garage now. My blood chilled. Who else had been waiting in the shadows? The moment the recording ended, the room fractured. Investors stood, some shouting for explanations, others backing toward the exits with their phones pressed to their ears. Cameras flashed. Regulators spread through the suite with papers, demanding access to accounts, seizing laptops, confiscating phones. Richard's empire, which had once felt untouchable, now looked brittle, like glass hit with a hammer. Richard himself rose halfway from his chair and then collapsed back down, his eyes darting from face to face. He tried to speak, but his throat made only a rasp. Claire clutched his arm, but when she saw the regulators taking notes, she pulled away as if his skin burned. Her silver dress shimmered like foil in the harsh lights of the reporters' cameras. Rosalind, Richard finally managed, his voice cracking, we can fix this. Step outside with me. We'll explain together. He held out his hand, as if the last hour could vanish with a gesture. I didn't move. You tried to kill me, I said. My voice carried over the commotion. There is no fixing that. Gasps echoed. The older senator investor stepped forward. Is this true, Richard? You were behind the crash? Richard's jaw clenched. She's lying, he hissed. She's fabricating all of this. She was unstable after the accident, everyone knows it. But then Margaret stepped out from behind the regulators. I hadn't known she would come tonight. She looked tired, worn but resolute. I saw you with her, she told the room, pointing at Claire. The day of the funeral. The day Rosalind was supposed to be dead. You didn't grieve. You celebrated. You opened champagne. Her words were daggers. Claire's face drained white. Richard lunged toward Margaret, but a regulator blocked him. His voice cracked into a roar. This is conspiracy. She's manipulating you. The junior partner, cornered near the exit, tried to slip away. One regulator stopped him with a warrant in hand. We have your rental records, she said flatly. You drove the car. You forced her off the road. He went pale and stammered. I was ordered. Before clapping a hand over his mouth. Too late. The investors had heard enough. One by one, they turned their backs on Richard. Deals that had taken him decades to secure evaporated in minutes. Phones rang and I knew stock values were already plummeting. His legacy, his pride was burning alive in that suite. And then my phone buzzed again. The anonymous number. Garrot. Now, my stomach knotted. Someone else was moving outside the walls of this disaster. I excused myself from the regulators, slipped past the reporters, and headed for the elevators. The descent felt endless. When the doors opened, the parking garage was almost empty. My heels echoed in the cavernous space. For a moment I thought the tip had been a trick, that I had left the chaos upstairs for nothing. Then I saw her. Claire, barefoot now, silver heels dangling from her hand. She leaned against Richard's black SUV, her face twisted with fury. "You think this ends with your little show?" she spat when she saw me. "You humiliated him. You humiliated me. Do you know what he'll do to you now?" I stepped closer, each word slow and deliberate. "He won't do anything. He's finished. And you? You'll be lucky if prison takes you before the investors do." Her laugh was sharp, brittle. "You don't understand. Richard wasn't working alone. There are others. You poked a nest you can't even see." My pulse thudded. Was this bravado or truth? Before I could ask, headlights flared at the far end of the garage. Another SUV rolled in, dark windows, slow approach. Claire smirked. "See? They're already here." I backed toward a concrete pillar, hand trembling around my phone. I hit record, every instinct screaming to capture what happened next. The second SUV stopped, engine rumbling. A door opened. A tall man stepped out, face shadowed, voice calm. "Rosalind," he said, as if greeting an old friend. "You should have stayed gone." Claire's triumphant smile widened. My breath caught. Whoever he was, he knew me. And judging by the way Claire leaned toward him like a savior, he was part of the web Richard had woven long before tonight. I realized then that Richard's betrayal was only the surface. There were deeper players, and they had just stepped out of the shadows, ready to finish what Richard had started. The morning after felt unreal, like waking into a world that had tilted overnight. Headlines screamed my husband's name. Corporate titan accused of fraud and attempted murder. News vans clogged the street outside my house. Reporters camped on the lawn, shoving microphones toward every shadow that moved. The empire Richard had spent years building collapsed in less than 12 hours. Inside, I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of untouched coffee. Papers and screenshots sprawled in front of me, each one now in the hands of regulators and investigators. The evidence was airtight. Offshore accounts, forged contracts, the recorded conversation, witness statements. Marcia had worked through the night with her team, sending files to agencies across the state. Richard had been taken into custody before dawn. The footage of him being led away in handcuffs replayed on every channel. His face was pale, jaw clenched, eyes hollow. Claire had been arrested too, still in her silver dress from the night before. Her makeup smeared like war paint gone wrong. The junior partner, terrified and broken, had already confessed to his role in the crash. Their alliance had shattered into pieces. But the part that unsettled me most was what had happened in the garage. That second SUV, that shadowed man with his calm voice and quiet threat. None of the reports mentioned him. He had vanished before police arrived. Claire had refused to name him. I replayed the moment in my mind again and again. His measured tone, the way Claire had leaned toward him. Whoever he wasn't just another accomplice. He was higher, deeper, the kind of person who didn't show up in headlines. Not yet. Elaine arrived mid-morning, bringing breakfast I couldn't eat. She hugged me hard, her face set. "You won, Rosalind," she said. "He's finished. It's over." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that exposing Richard and Claire had ended the nightmare. But the anonymous messages still burned in my phone, their sender still unknown. "He is not your only enemy." The words haunted me like a ghost. By afternoon, the prosecutors called. They wanted me to testify at the preliminary hearing. They promised protection, security details, full cooperation. I agreed because I had no choice. My voice was the final nail in Richard's coffin. That evening, I walked outside for the first time since the chaos. Reporters swarmed, questions flying like arrows. "Rosalind, did you fake your death? Did your husband try to kill you? Who was the woman in silver?" I ignored them, stepping into the waiting car. The cameras caught every blink, every step. From the back seat, I looked out at the city. Billboards that once carried Richard's face had already been pulled down. His name was being erased faster than I could process. But the erasure didn't bring peace. It brought emptiness. The life I thought I had died in that crash had finally completely burned away. Still, when I returned home, I found a letter slipped under my door. No envelope. No signature. Just 3 words written in a sharp hand. "We are watching." My skin prickled. Whoever the man in the garage was, he hadn't forgotten me. And he wanted me to know the game wasn't finished. I held the paper until my hand stopped shaking. Then I burned it over the sink, watching the flames eat the edges. "You'll have to do more than watch," I whispered to the ash. The next day I would face Richard in court, and while his empire had already collapsed, I knew his secrets had roots deeper than even I had imagined. And the shadows circling around me were not done. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not in temperature but in spirit. Rows of benches filled with reporters, investors, strangers who wanted to witness the fall of a man who had once been untouchable. The judge's gavel echoed, and then Richard was led in. Shackles at his wrists. His once impeccable suit wrinkled. His eyes darted across the room, searching for allies, finding none. When his gaze finally landed on me, I did not flinch. For the first time in years, I looked at him not as a wife, not as a victim, but as a survivor. He mouthed something, maybe an apology, maybe another lie, but I didn't give him the dignity of a reply. The prosecutor outlined the charges: fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. The evidence stacked like bricks. My recordings, the financial records, the testimony from Margaret, the confession of the junior partner. Every piece another nail in his coffin. Claire sat nearby, hands trembling, her silver glamour gone, her face hollow. She refused to meet my eyes. When I took the stand, the room stilled. I spoke clearly, each word deliberate. I described the crash, the hospital, the anonymous texts, the night in the hotel suite when I plugged the thumb drive into the projector. My voice didn't shake. Every detail was a blade. I wanted the world to see that I had not been erased. Richard's lawyer tried to tear me apart, called me unstable, said grief had twisted my mind. But the evidence was undeniable, and the jury's faces told me they already knew the truth. I ended with the words that had carried me through every sleepless night. He called me a liability, but I am not the liability. I am the witness who survived. When I stepped down, I felt something shift, not just in the room but in me. The fear that had lived in my bones since the crash finally loosened. The verdict wouldn't come for weeks, but it didn't matter. His reputation was gone. His empire dismantled. His allies fleeing. Claire's life in ruins. And the investors who had once toasted him now whispered my name with respect. But as I walked out of the courthouse, the cameras flashing like lightning, I remembered the shadowed man in the garage. The one who had spoken my name as though it belonged to him. His threat still lingered. "We are watching." Richard might have been the monster I knew, but there were more monsters hiding behind him. My fight wasn't truly over. That night I stood by the window of Elaine's house, city lights flickering in the distance. For the first time I let myself breathe. I wasn't just alive. I was free. Richard had tried to bury me, but I had risen from the ashes stronger than ever. And as I turned from the window, I thought of the women who might one day hear my story. Women told they were liabilities. Women dismissed, silenced, erased. To them I say this: never underestimate the power of what you know. Never surrender the truth. It can cut deeper than any betrayal. My story is not just revenge. It is proof that survival is the sharpest weapon. So if you are listening, if you've been betrayed, belittled, or cast aside, remember this. You can rise. You can fight. And when the time is right, you can win. If you stayed with me through this journey, don't let it end here. Share this story, subscribe, and join me for more tales of betrayal and survival. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is not the ruin of another. It's reclaiming your own life.